We've had a presence for quite a while. We've got probably 60% of the install base are GE products. Our largest project there has been within IPP. And I think as we go forward, especially as they're looking at deregulating the power sector, we're working with the government and with a number of companies there from a standpoint of really taking a look at what the opportunities are. Could be in the form of, more independent power producing capability out of the country, rehabilitating some of the existing facilities, and then really taking a look at, continuing to provide power generation solutions for them. And it's also working with large industrial companies as well. We've put in some specific targeted power generation facilities with Dangote, at cement plants, et cetera. So there's a lot of different ways you can work in supplying the power needs for Nigeria, both industrially and consumer-wise.
It's interesting because Nigeria is deregulating its power sector in a sense, and here in South Africa, of course, we're still waiting for that formal regulation to come through. Do you think that that is the best way for Africa moving forward to ensure that it does electrify rural Africa?
I think it's a combination of both. You need the private sector, obviously, and I think you need a little bit of the public. Every country is pretty much driven by the public sector and the utility industry, in the utility sector. So we need a balance of that. And I think the biggest aspect is making sure that people understand that there's an economic value from all levels of the power generation, whether it's investing, the actual generation, and then the transmission and distribution. So that's really what they have to focus on, and making sure that it's a viable project from an investor standpoint as well as a consumer standpoint. And I think that's the balance that a lot of countries are trying to come to grips with. And I think one of the biggest things that they have to factor in when they think about what a cost of power is, there's two things. One is there's a tremendous cost of no power, and so a comparison of, and this goes mostly in the renewable sector, a comparison of renewables versus existing. If you still need power, so there's a lot that's required there. And then the other thing is, I think people, when they think about their power ability or capability, is they don't always think about all of the alternatives they have, the diesel generator in the backyard or at the plant, and what they need to do from a standpoint and what the cost is from that. So I think when you really do a comparison of what your true power costs are, I think people have to make sure they take both of those into consideration.
And of course, Nigeria, as an example, it is the biggest importer of generators globally, which of course is quite a tragic outcome of the fact that government perhaps hasn't been doing enough to ensure that it does electrify enough people, and of course increasing the generation of electricity. Mr. Ireland, would you say that at this point Africa does need to diversify further at any cost to ensure that not only it electrifies as many people as possible, but ensures that it does, of course, pay a lot of cognizance to the environmental factors?
Yeah, I think there's a balance, and I think the biggest thing is making sure that there's a balance of all types of generation. It can't all be renewable. It can't all be, fossil fuel. There's got to be a balance depending on the fuel sources that's available in each country. So some countries in Africa have a large hydro presence. Others have wind, others have readily available natural gas, and others have, South Africa has coal. So there's a lot of difference. So fuel is the biggest thing from a standpoint of power generation. So, and then you develop the equipment around that. So, and so that's how I think when countries think about it, they've got to have that mix, whatever makes sense for them.
Would you say that it's up to companies such as General Electric to come up with the right technology to ensure that?
Sure. I think our job is to develop technologies that are going to be able to provide solutions to their needs, and that means if there's a fuel source that's there and our machines don't work, can we develop a technology that will work with that fuel source? If there's an aspect of the transmission piece, can the grid handle the amount of electricity generated? All that, I think all of that are technologies that we can help provide solutions for.
And we know that General Electric also plays in the nuclear space. Are you pro-nuclear for Africa?
I think we have to understand what the needs are from that standpoint and what the issues are. And I would say that, nuclear, we have a nuclear business, as you said, and I think obviously we support that. But there's a lot of factors in putting in a nuclear plant around the world, let alone Africa, so I think we'd have to probably wait and see.
With regards to COP17 and the outcomes going forward, what would you like to see as within the private sector and, of course, working with government? What kind of changes would you like to see from a regulatory standpoint?
Well, I think a big piece is having the private sector and the government making sure that they can work together. It shouldn't be government telling the private sector what to do or vice versa. And I think, you know, these talks, as they progress, I think the solutions and the issues that they discuss ought to be something that private sector can support from a standpoint of economically, as well as government support as well. So I think it's a balance of both, and hopefully that'll be what comes out of the discussions.
So balancing act more so.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And with regards to funding, they say that, you know, the private sector should actually be at the forefront as opposed to waiting for government to be at the forefront of a lot of the funding and regulatory changes. How do you stand on that?
Well, I think from a technology standpoint, we definitely want to be in the front, and from that standpoint, we continue to invest. We've invested not just in the energy sector, but across our product lines in something called Eco-Imagination. We've invested $5 billion in the last 5 years, making our products less, you know, a big decrease in carbon footprint, et cetera. So we're going to continue to do that, and we'll do it going forward. And I think it's up to us to continue to bring the technologies and then work within the regulatory frameworks of the governments.